Wabarakatuh. Welcome to Outlook with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on Takbeer TV. For the next hour, we'll be talking about the rise of the far right, the mainstreaming of politics, and mainstreaming within our politics, a language of demonization, and at the heart of that demonization is towards Islam and Muslims. What actions can we take to protect our communities? But more importantly, how did we get to this point where people are fearful about what may happen? Mosques have been attacked. There are places where the England flag has been painted on walls of the mosque, and derogatory comments have also been made. And in these turbulent times, what are the responsibilities of broadcasters like Takbeer TV is to give a platform to have those discussions in a responsible way, but also to look for solutions. And yes, is this the beginning of a realignment of our politics, where we are seeing the rise of reform and countering the narrative of the sitting Labour government? We'll be talking about all these issues as we do every week here on Sky Channel 743. We're broadcasting on social media, whether that's Facebook, YouTube, and many other platforms, wherever you are around the world. I'm Mohammed Shafiq. Thank you so much for joining us. So we're going to introduce our guest as well, who's going to be with us for the full hour. Community activist from Rochdale, Majid Iqbal, is joining us as well. Majid, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Good to have you, Maj. We used to do this regularly on a different platform, but it's great to reconnect. Tell us a bit about yourself, where, you're obviously a community activist, you've been involved in this work for many, many years. Tell us how your story began.
So I think it's growing up in the West as Muslims, people of different colour, kind of shaping our identity, kind of understanding who we are, what we have to offer in this society. It was that growing up phase where we start to ask a lot of questions surrounding things that are happening around us, events that are taking place internationally, things which are happening domestically, our connections to somewhere where
we seem to have lost the light in your link there. We'll try to sort that out and come back to you. But as we were saying, so what we've had is obviously the general election last year, which led to the end of 13 years of a Conservative government and a Labour government led by the Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who's had a very difficult year, just had a reshuffle, the resignation of Angela Grant. Oh, you're back. I can see you now back on the screen. We lost you for a second there, Maj. You were saying?
Sorry, I think it's been the connection, I think.
Yeah.
So I think growing up, that in itself, then we tend to ask a lot of questions about our identity and our surroundings and politics and who we are. So that's kind of the early stages of trying to understand kind of the world that's around us. So we've been growing up in eras in the 80s, in the 90s, where we've come across conversations about immigration or immigration, integration, assimilation. We've had stories from across Europe as well, where, for example, in France, when we were growing up, we used to hear about stories about the hijab not being allowed to be worn by Muslim women if they're going to school, colleges, universities, in council buildings. So there was a lot to take in at that time as well. And throughout the ages, throughout the decades that have gone past, we've had the war on terror, we've had the rise of the far right, especially in the last 20 years, accelerated over the last 5 years, I would say. They have had a voice, they've had a lot to say and target Muslim communities, those communities who are not indigenous to the lands that this country's population is from, whether that's Britain, France, Germany, Denmark. There's been lots of different conversations around this.
Lots of discussions. And you look at the history, obviously talking to our parents, we're the same age. We went, so we're in the same age bracket, And when we talk to our parents, they would tell you about the rise of racism, the Combat 18, the far right Nazis. And we thought we left that behind. But in recent times, there's been a renaissance, if you like, of the threat from the far right. What do you put that down to?
There's many factors for this now. So there's been disillusionment of the general population with what's happening nationally, the national picture. So when they see what's happening with the NHS, when they see that there's kind of funds or money that could have been spent in the UK is now being spent on international projects, there's been this tension, political tension, which has been grasped by the far right, because the far right are saying the government is not addressing these issues, and therefore we will start championing these. One of those issues has been of asylum seekers, of the whole immigration project. They feel that the government has completely mishandled this, whether it's a Tory government, whether it's a Labour government. There's that disillusionment in the sense that they can start pointing fingers at minority groups and blaming them for national crises. Yeah. So whether it's criminality, they start to pluck out evidences, and very selectively, to be honest, that there's a rise in crime, and therefore some of the minority groups are championing this type of crime. One of the things which surfaced was the grooming gangs case in 2011, 2012. And they began to stage a lot of protest, rally people around the fact that these people are from a certain background. They started even quoting the religion of these people as well, saying that it's not only just they are of Asian Pakistani descent, it's their religion. And when you start looking around on the internet and trawling through their arguments, they're trying to connect the faith of Islam, the religion of Islam, to the reason why these people are involved in these activities. A far stretch, to be honest, is what we call intellectual gymnastics. It doesn't fit the picture at all. It's a stretch of the imagination argument. So there was a lot of traction on this. It kind of lost its way, and then it's made it back. So I was on holiday, I think it was happened 2 years ago, I think it was, where was it last year or the year before, where we had the case of a young boy in Liverpool who ended up stabbing some girl in a dance studio, and they were very, very young. We're talking about in the ages between 7 and 11, I think they were, and some died, some are severely injured. And straight away, the first narrative that came onto the scene, which is down to social media and the way social media has allowed voices to become unchecked, facts to be unchecked, to be kind of spearheaded this whole campaign that it was a Muslim migrant who was responsible for this particular incident itself there. And that's where then that very, very kind of the next few days led to all those protests taking place. Even masjids in Liverpool, one of the masjids, I know for definite, it was badly damaged, and there were people stuck inside because the riot was outside. And they could not
you're
leave
talking
the masjid.
about sorry, just to kind of give the big picture to our viewers. You're talking about the Southport mosque that was attacked and the Southport incident that happened where 3 beautiful girls were murdered. But isn't the reality, I'm just trying to understand, when we talk about, for example, Epping, the hotel in Epping, where we've seen protests. Yes, the far right have jumped on that, but the underlying reason is that one of the people who was staying there, one of the asylum seekers, has been found guilty of sexual offences against children, local residents. So isn't this primarily an issue of safety? People are concerned what is going on. And if this happened in the Muslim community and Muslim girls were being attacked and sexual offences, God forbid, how would the Muslim community react? They would want to protect their communities. And why can't white communities protect their communities?
Yeah, and but it's a very important conversation, definitely. So let's take that case that came up at the Epping Hotel. to kind of look at this event in the context of the whole immigration conversation. What's the percentage of these events taking place? What is the percentage of such offences taking place? Majority, we're talking about 99% of asylum seekers are not involved in these type of activities. Yeah, where somebody has gone outside and then decided just, to harass a woman and then make sexual advances towards her. These are a minority of cases that are taking place. Majority of people who come here for asylum, families are coming. Yeah, we have husbands, wives, children, we have the elderly, we have the aged, yeah, and we've got the very young as well at the same time. Why have they come to the UK for is to look for an opportunity to legitimately kind of come to the country and put their asylum case forward, and for it to be judged on whether they are eligible to have refugee status inside this country. These people who come, they want to get on with their lives, they want to start working, they want their children to have a better life than where they came from, and the circumstances they've had to go through.
Yeah.
And
So,
it's just a minority of cases. So the fact that this person now, there was a court case, and that's over, and he's been charged with the sexual offence itself there. That's fine. It's exactly the course of action that should have taken place. But the fact that the majority of asylum seekers are not involved in this level of criminality, do not want to even engage in such acts in the first place. They want to focus on the work they need to do, which is like starting a job, eventually getting their kids into the right schools and getting them a good education, settling down in communities and actually contributing financially via the taxes in this country.
okay. So I think we both agree that they've got we can't really label all of the people who go to these protests as far right, because some of them have got genuine concerns about what's going on in their community. But do you think successive governments have made a mistake in not engaging local residents when they were housing these refugees and asylum seekers and migrants whilst they were going through the immigration process in hotels without thinking about the impact that's going to have on those established communities?
Yeah, I would go kind of a step backward before answering that question, which is, why is it the fact that people feel the need to come to this country and seek asylum? If we look at the demographics of where these people are coming from, they're coming from like areas of severe poverty, areas where there's been war zones. So we look at let's look at three cases here. The Syrian resettlement program, which took place around about, I think it's about 7 years ago. The government had a quota of Syrians, which they were allowing for them to come into the UK legally and making arrangements for them in this country. What's happened in Syria? Who was responsible for the dictatorship that ran there for decades and was, never and was actually supported by, successive governments, Western governments. They propped up these regimes, created chaos, which created political chaos in those countries. And when there was political action, revolutions, spring started to take place, things have gone completely pear-shaped. Same cases in Libya. I mean, Britain had a role in what was happening in taking down the Gaddafi regime there as well, Britain and France. Afghanistan, this has been a war zone since 9/11 took place. Within months, Afghanistan was under attack. And 25 years, of a country being economically, politically, structurally, socially destroyed. Who's responsible for that? So these are questions that I think we need to ask. Why is there such a need for immigration in the first place? Is because the Western world has a lot to answer for when it comes to structural adjustment loans through the World Bank and forcing these countries to spend money on projects which are more favorable for Western countries to have in place rather than for the local populations. All the wars that have taken place in these countries militarily, and even some of the decisions that are being made politically of countries not wanting
Yeah.
to resolve the matters that are there. That's causing a lot of the immigration that's coming into the European countries itself. Further from going on to answering your question
Is
itself,
there an undertone of racism at the heart of this about protecting white civilization, re-immigration, every aspect? I mean, we see it on social media, the far right, every single aspect of life of Muslims is being dissected and criticized on some media platforms.
it is, yeah. So just to kind of take your point there, Ukrainians also came to this country as well under a refugee resettlement program until their situation in their country gets better. Now, how many far-right protests have you actually seen outside, hotels where, let's say, Ukrainians were held, or places where they were congregating? Hardly any, to be honest. We can see that there's a dichotomy here. There's a distinction between how immigration is seen as a mass Muslim immigration, which is not true actually, because you've got people from, as an example, African countries, and they, black and they're Christian. We've got people who are coming from Afghanistan and they're Sikh. Yeah, we've got plenty of immigration which is non-Muslim, but the focus has been that, look, this is changing the demographics of our country. This is about identity politics, which is why you got people like some politicians. I'm not sure if I should name them now, but I was on there on the X accounts, and they were saying that, look, actually we should quote it. It was Lee Anderson MP. He was saying that the Union flag should be it should be a ceremony at every school, and they should sing the national anthem every single day. And it says, why not? Who would this upset? So directly, the conversation is for those people who might not directly be British but living here. They have connections back to many other countries away from Britain. It's about them. Like that, you should be forced to wave the England flag.
Yeah.
You should be singing the national anthem because you're now in this country. Therefore, you should follow these rules. You should be championing the British cause for everything. Yeah, and there was even a conversation historically in the past as well that when Britain is fighting wars, whose side are you on?
Or the cricket test.
Yeah, this is the Norman Tebbit cricket test from before. When England is playing, even if you're Pakistani, even if you Bangladeshi, wherever you are, or Indian, you should be supporting the English cricket team. Further from that, later on, when wars were taking place and when the war on terrorism was in its height, there was questions about allegiance. Who do you support? Do you support the British troops in Iraq? Do you support the British troops in Afghanistan? And if you don't, there's something wrong with your Britishness. And these are the same comments, these are the same ideas, these are the same ideological conversations resurfacing again. Hence, why not the national anthem be sung in schools and the flag to be hoisted in schools as well.
Is it what we've experienced already but on steroids? What's different? Because I suspect you probably say the same thing as I'm going to say, which I think it's to do with social media, how something is amplified, fake news is amplified. Southport was an example of that. They assumed he was straight away Muslim, and then the police had to come out and say he was not a Muslim. We've entered that dangerous territory where the police are not only having to investigate a very abhorrent crime, but then also having to deal with the fake news that is being peddled out there.
Yeah, so the world that we are living in now, once upon a time, we had a few channels on television, and the voices that could be on there were carefully checked. Let's put it this way. Now with social media, everybody has a voice. Now, whether that's for good or whether that's for bad, it has its pros and its cons. But the thing is, people can put up a video on Instagram, on Facebook, on X, on Snapchat, and make a comment about something. So, as an example, last night I was looking at my feed, and on X we had one lady who was saying that, look, we can hear the azan in Leicester 5 times a day coming from the mosque. What's wrong with Britain? Why have we become like this? So anybody can come on and make a comment, and is that comment verified? Is it checked? Is she saying that it's on loudspeaker? Is it saying that you can hear it just minutely from the masjid when it's the prayer time, somebody is reciting the azan? So, you will start to see people's comments start coming on there, and, comments very negative, very anti-Islamic. This is our country, we should be, how can this happen? There's, comments on Shabana Mahmood becoming the Home Secretary. The far right is throwing in the argument: how can a immigrant, somebody from an immigrant family, be now the person responsible for immigration in this country? Yeah, which is again is a falsely leading question, to be honest. I mean, in terms of her background, in terms of her education, her living over here, what's that got to do with her kind of her ability to do a job? Even then, if you go to some of these again X accounts, I think they seem to be on steroids more than anything else. You can go to some of them, and it says, one of them read, I've got in front of me, all these Muslim MPs don't care about us. Should we ban Muslims from becoming MPs? Yes or no? You got Sajid Javid on there, his picture.
The former Home Secretary.
And former Home Secretary, yeah. We've got Shabana Mahmood's picture was on there. We have the MP from Peribar, Khalid Mahmood, Sultana Parveen, I think she's called.
Sultana,
all these people who
Zara Sultana. Yeah.
Zara Sultana.
Yeah.
Right. Zara Sultana.
Majid, I forgot, and I apologise to my viewers, because we were supposed to share the number in which people can call us. It's 0161 529 9455. That's the number to the studio here. You can join us, put your questions to Majid, or share your comments about the threat of the far right on that. Let's go to the calls. Let's go to line 1. Assalamu alaikum. You're live on Takbeer TV. What's your name and where are you calling from?
If England are playing cricket match, we should all support England team. I don't think everybody would agree to that. For example, if England are playing India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, or any foreign
so let me
team,
ask you this. So if England are playing India, who would you be supporting?
I mean,
Go
we
on,
don't have
tell
the
us.
right to support England all the time.
England, okay. But if
We
Pakistan
have
were
to
playing
support
England,
religion,
if Pakistan were playing England, who would you be supporting?
Pardon?
If Pakistan were playing in England, who would you be supporting?
Pakistan.
Ah, interesting. And that doesn't make you any less British, does it?
Yeah, game, we shouldn't indulge in politics and sports. We have to, country of our origin should be supported, I think if England are playing Indian people should support India, or any country for that matter. That is my view,
Well, I'm sorry, going to disappoint you. Confess here. I would always support any team but India, but that's probably because of my rivalry between Pakistan and India. But yeah, there are millions of people who support India rather than England.
I don't agree. That if England...
come on England and come on Pakistan, that's all I say.
They are playing should support their own country rather than England.
Yeah. Okay, so you talked about the cricket test there, but what about generally the threat that we are facing from the far right and racist around the country?
Well, that is a different debate. But, you were talking about this being Muslims being targeted. But there's no unity in Muslims. We have so many countries. They are not supporting Palestine as they should. I'm surprised at that. Because there's no unity amongst Muslims.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us there, brother, sharing your thoughts about the cricket test. Majid, let me ask you that same question. England playing India, who do you support?
I remain neutral, to be honest. I enjoy a good game. I enjoy a good game.
Yeah.
But the fact is, look, sport is, I think it's a great way to look at this issue. If we look at our lifestyle, they're affected by so many different influences. So, if we were sat watching television and there was American programs which have been broadcast since childhood, since I know, does that make somebody less British if they were to watch US programs all the time? So whether it was back in the day, you're watching A-Team, Street Hawk, you're watching
Dynasty, Dallas, all
American
these
wrestling.
yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's a false
I
argument
find that
against
really fascinating, Majid, because you often think about this and you think about you're still contributing to the economy, you're going out to work, you're contributing your taxes, you're patriotic in the sense that you respect the law of the land and you're proud of your community and where you're living, just so happens to support a different country's cricket team. It's a bit like, I don't get on with Liverpool fans, let's be honest, and I'm sure they don't get on with me because I'm a Manchester United fan. But when it came to tackling Islamophobia or fighting racism or raising the voice for Palestine, you put your allegiances to a side and come together. There are common issues in which you can unite.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. Yeah. So those things can be put to the side. Remember, there's always different shades of politics as well. So just because we have a British, member of Parliament voicing his concern against what's happening in another part of the world, which is British policy, that this is what they are going to do. Do we question that person's Britishness? Yeah, we don't. Yeah, and this could be down to a level of racism as well, where the person is white, whatever, and we just gloss it over with an argument and saying that it's a different brand of politics that's been offered there. When Muslims do this, unfortunately, we are, not offered the same sympathy in the same regard.
So, we're obviously halfway through the program. I don't know where this time goes, but let's just focus on, obviously, we got the rise of reform. The leading in the polls have been doing for a significant amount of time, and it's not. It used to be laughable that people would say reform might form the next government, but now it's looking likely by the day. Obviously, I know we've got 4 years to go. Do you think there's a link between that and what we are seeing, the attacks on mosques, the rise of racism that is being amplified on social media?
Yeah, there's a political environment which is hot at the moment. These conversations about immigration, about identity politics, very much like the Trumpian style of conversations that are taking place in the US, which led to the re-election of Donald Trump again. Very similar. We're finding that in circles, conversations about Muslim communities, what they should not do. This on social media, it's kind of looking at what we can talk about on the show. There's one gentleman, Matt Goodwin. He's been to the Reform UK party conventions. His last tweets, one of them was ban the burqa, ban the niqab, shut down Sharia courts, ban cousin marriage, prescribe Muslim brotherhood, deport dual national rape gang members, start drawing some lines in the sand. This is Britain, this is England, this is not Afghanistan. So you can see there's a bit of a tempo building up.
There is, yeah.
And these are the topics that are being used to kickstart their kind of their political campaigns, and gain some kind of a political points and some kind of political clout against the two mainstream parties. This is their niche now, that they are addressing these issues whilst other two mainstream parties.
And do you think that, when they're talking about reform here, I'm sure if they were here, they would adopt a different language, and there's an open invitation there to anybody from Reform who wants to join us here on the programme Outlook every week. But if you want to pick up the phone, 0161 529 9455 is the live studio number. We are taking calls as well, so please share with your thoughts. Interestingly, do you think they can sustain it? They've set out their pitch this weekend in Birmingham at their annual conference, Reform, but do you think they'll be able to sustain the momentum as we head towards the general election, which is expected to be sometime in 2029?
Yeah, I think the way it will probably end up eventually, is the same way what Brexit happened when Brexit happened. So a massive call that we need to exit Britain from a lot of these movements which were pioneering this whole call that look, UK needs to be different. Then the event takes place and Brexit occurs and Britain does become separate from Europe, and then they start thinking, well, what have we done? You know, was that actually the right call? Okay, we didn't think about these particular eventualities. We didn't think about taxes. We didn't think about trade. We didn't think about this. We didn't think about our relationship with the other European states. We didn't think about how we're going to now, how we're going to mitigate the losses, maybe through international trade, that we can maybe address the deficits. It became like an afterthought rather than during the process itself. So with these movements, with Reform UK and what they are messaging with now, it's what we call timeline politics. These issues will finish, and therefore their voice will disappear as well. So this is something similar to what's been happening with the far right groups, not the political ones, but the ones which are staging all the protests. There's always like a certain time frame of their events taking place. They need something to fuel their campaigns. They need headline stories, and then that headline story stays there for a couple of months, and then these protests, campaigns, they all kind of they fall flat on their face and the fire's put out.
All right, so I just want to, probably got about 20 minutes or so left, and I just wanted to focus on the Muslim community. We've got the mosque, we've got the businesses, we've got the money, we've got the institutions. We've established that through the pioneers who came in the 50s and the 60s, and we've got this community. First of all, what has the Muslim community, and includes the masajids, the imams, the whole institutions that we have, what have we done wrong when it comes to tackling the far right and tackling racism in this country?
Yeah, I mean, I want to put it in those words in the way I look at it, as something which has been done wrong, because remember, these are all dynamic events that are taking place, and sometimes it's difficult to keep up with the pace of what's happening, and sometimes the institutions that have been built over the decades were not really equipped to tackle some of these scenarios. They were built and designed for worship, for Islamic study classes, Quran classes, and just for general educational purposes, and serving the Muslim communities kind of worshipping needs, congregating for Salat al-Taraweeh, hosting basic events such that Muslims who are living here don't lose out on their identity, that they remain connected with their faith. So these issues now have, as you mentioned, they're on steroids. They are growing at an exponential rate. So there's surging Islamophobia and hate crimes which have been reported. So the helpline Tell Mama recorded 5,837 anti-Muslim incidents just in 2024 alone. And that was an increase by almost by 3,500 from the previous years itself. So there's things that are taking place which really didn't hit the headlines before for us. So what institutions now need to look at is, what are the current dynamics, what are the current challenges? And we are watching the news, we are on social media, all of us, young and old, we're seeing what's happening. What type of response do we need to have? One of them needs to be that Muslim communities must get their institutions to address these particular matters. So first of all, explain what's happening, explain the challenges that we are facing, and then draft out programs which give us a bit of more of a clear pathway as to what actions can be undertaken. Now, some of them could be to do with law and order and reporting these crimes straight away to the police. Some of these are issues to do with now activism, now getting our younger generation to, number one, look at the challenges and see what response we can draft out, and use the social media platforms. I mean, it's an amazing tool, to be honest, when it's used correctly. So where these voices are being aired, are we able to directly challenge those voices and put out the correct arguments forward? So whether, as we mentioned, the Liverpool case, where there was a stabbing, and that was, falsely reported on social media as being somebody who's of Muslim background, and he's an immigrant, and it's because of their religion. They're doing these things. They hate us. The Muslim community doesn't like the British way of life, doesn't like the freedoms that we have, doesn't like, the things that we have to offer. I mean, this is a grossly false narrative. Muslims have been living in this country for decades, from the early 40s and 50s, where's that hatred? Where's these things that these people are talking about? Muslims have contributed, economically, financially. If you look at the places where Muslim communities thrive, in terms of the businesses that they've set up, and the contribution they've made towards different aspects, different industries in this country, is actually phenomenal. Muslims are keen on education. This is what they want to get involved in. So children are encouraged to pursue further studies, whether at college or at universities. So we need to challenge these narratives such that the person who's living next to us, who's our non-Muslim neighbor, doesn't look at us and feel that Muslims have negative views about living over here. If that was the case, we wouldn't be here in the first place.
Yeah. And I think majority of people in this country are decent people. They just want to get on with their lives, both Muslim, non-Muslim, Jews, Christians, Hindus, Sikhs. And it's just that the far right seem to have amplified and have got platforms where they can air their views. Okay, so we've discussed, I'm sure you're not happy about the way I labelled that, because we can have a long discussion around without criticising our imams in masajids, but there have been very little engagement with our fellow citizens. Have we opened up our masajids? I know we've got Visit Your Mosque campaigns, but I'm talking here about decades. What have we done? What needs to change? What lessons do we learn from the past to make sure that when we talk about the far right, how we can stop it, how we can change their mindset, and how can we build a cohesive society? What are your suggestions?
Yeah, so I think institutions like masjids can take on this responsibility because they have a platform, they have the space, they have the voices that can be heard. Remember, the platforms inside a masjid are places where people take the voices very, very seriously. If the masjid imam says something, that counts for something. It means something. It has a weight to it as well. And we shouldn't all just rely just upon one individual who is the imam, but the fact that the masjid has, a committee, it has many different departments. Some of these are led by a younger generation. The younger generation understand these challenges really, really well because, they've gone through schooling, high school, college, universities. They've worked in environments where they can actually sense that there's, people talking about Islam in a very negative way. They are perfectly poised to design campaigns which directly address all the different arguments that are being posed. So they should take an active step, to be honest. Every masjid should have a committee where there's younger people involved who have their ears to the ground, they have their eyes, they're seeing, they're visualizing all the events that are taking place, and are able then to get guidance from ulama in terms of asking questions, specific questions that may be raised by the far right and about the Muslim community, whether it's to do with, do Muslim women have to wear a burqa? Do they have to wear niqab? What's the stance on these issues? Looking at the conversations that the far right raise and try to present Islam as being problematic. Is that actually the case? Is Islam a problem in terms of existing in a Western society?
Yeah, and Western society, and opening up the masajids and working with our young people. It's, I don't know, I just feel we're coming to a pressure point. We see the protest outside the asylum hotels. Lots of these are in predominantly white areas, Essex and places like that. And I'm sure there are others. But what happens if there's God forbid, a confrontation between the far right and people from ethnic minority communities? And there is, God forbid, violence. I don't want to advocate that, and I don't want to encourage that. I hope it doesn't happen, and pray it doesn't happen. But how can we as a community make sure we take the steps to make our community feel safe?
Yeah, so security is definitely important. So I think if you remember, there have been, masjids which organize security when it's Salatul Taraweeh time, when it's Jummah Salah time as well. They would have extra staff outside over there patrolling, whether it's to do with cars or generally keeping an eye out on what's happening. I think this is, we need to carry on with this. We, as a younger generation, need to take more of a role in these. It's our responsibility. It's our communities that we need to look after. So if younger generation is not involved, then there's no harm, there's no shame in approaching your mosque and saying, "What can I do? I'm here to help. I want to get more engaged. I want to feel more connected to the masjid. It gives me the opportunity to come to the masjid more regularly, pray here, be amongst good, decent people." This is the Quranic injunction as well. That Allah Ta'ala mentions that "O you who believe, fear Allah, wa akunu ma'as-sadiqeen," and be with those who are the truthful. Give the younger generation these opportunities to kind of look at what they can offer, whether that is security for the masjid, whether that is organizing exhibitions and open days that can be in the masjid, that can be outside of the masjid, in places like town halls, community venues, to really kind of like advocate the different aspects of Islam which are being presented as problematic, or people are being made to fear from. So there's all these opportunities. So one of the main things that we can learn, I think, with the recent Gaza issue, with what's happening in Palestine, if you look at the movements in this country, who's spearheading them? Its majority is non-Muslim. If you look at the university encampments that took place, majority was by non-Muslims.
Well, the Palestine Solidarity Campaign marches every so often in London, the national marches. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We have seen an increased number of imams now joining them, Muslims joining. There's a big Muslim block. There's an imam block as well. I've seen. I was leading the one in July. I think it was June or July, and there was a big contingent of imams. But you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's not our community.
Yeah. Mass mobilization can happen when there's a cause and there is something where you can rally people behind. We need to be doing these things. So Palestine is a big cause, and likewise these issues, the rise of the far right and how it may affect our communities. At the brunt of this is a lot of Muslim women who have to face comments about their attire, what they're wearing, or face comments like, "Go back to your own country. What are you doing here? You should not be wearing that dress inside this society. This is Britain now. You need to move on." Who's going to voice and kind of like be the voice for them? Who's going to protect them? So that community spirit, that we should be organizing, even women should be involved in the organization of activities where they feel a sense of community, where they feel that sense of brotherhood and sisterhood.
Imagine, I just want to share some comments that are coming through on social media, because I think we encourage people to share their comments, but let me give you some of them. Nasser Ali says, "Good topic of discussion." Saira Afzal says, "We only support the English cricket team when they play against India." Thank you, Sarah. Seth Masroor says, "Good topic, well said." Sarah goes on to say, "My grandfather was worried about our community being deported, and 30-40 years later my brother has the same concerns due to the rise of reform. We have seen cases of this happening with people where passports have been revoked." I'm just especially talking about Shamima Begum there. Mohammed Ozzy, who you will know and I will know, he says, "We can't have open borders. The asylum seekers that are coming, we need to do a background check." And Bilkiso Savage, who's a key leader in the British Muslim community, says, "On point, British Muslim institutions to draft and craft out activities to challenge the discrimination and biasness against Muslim religion. Indeed, we have to challenge the negative narrative against Muslims." Brother Shafiq, "Indeed, our imams have been slow to engage. However, things are slowly improving." And she says, "Excellent topic and a very knowledgeable speaker." And we're at a pressure point in this country. The government has said that we've got a new Home Secretary that you referred to, Shabana Mahmood, has said they want to fast track the closure of these hotels and looking at army barracks and other remote locations where they can house migrants and refugees. We've talked about what the Muslim community can do. How do we encourage more allies to join this common cause?
There are already a lot of common allies. We see that whenever there's a far right protest, you have a counter protest taking place. So there's people there who can actually see that, look, the far right narrative is actually wrong, it's detrimental to society, it's just full of rage and hatred. That's it. Angry people, and they are redirecting the anger at the wrong contingent of the wrong section of society, to be honest. So we have those voices on board. I think we just need to strengthen those. We need to actively kind of like solidify those links wherever possible, and find newer partners, who are willing to support what the Muslim community stands for. And I think it's very important that we do that on our terms as well. What is it that the Muslim community is demanding in these particular issues, and what we feel is the right course of action for us. Put those statements out, and then get people to support us on those particular points there. Then there are, like I said, already active voices. There are people who support refugee communities, asylum seeker communities, as well as Muslim communities. Hence, when it's Ramadan time, we will see them coming to the masjid, wanting to. They've already kept a fast. They want to open their fast. They want to see what the prayer facilities are like, and we need to keep that open.
So we'll keep that open and keep the dialogue going, but important not to be frightened, Majid Iqbal, from the threat of the far right. We lived, as our parents did, the 50s and the 60s, the 70s and 80s, the neo-Nazis, Combat 18, the EDL, football lads against, all of these groups, far right groups. We've been through the BNP, and we've got to the other side. Do you think we are talking ourselves into a confrontation and doomsday scenario rather than focusing on the common things that bind us together as a country?
I think the far right is obviously prodding, trying to poke and try to get responses. The responses then, therefore, if they get a violent response, it kind of solidifies their narrative. We need to have a very poised response, which is that the Muslim community has this direction. We have our vision in terms of what we aspire with our communities, what we want them to engage in. We want them to be practicing Muslims. We want them to be connected to the Islamic faith. We want the Muslim community to understand what's happening internationally, and that the fact that Islam has a voice, it has a political voice, it has answers, it has solutions to world issues, and the fact that we are able to present them, that's very, very important, that we are able to have this voice in this country itself there. So kind of moving on forward from here, it's a case of we need to continue what we have been doing. Our institutions are doing a great job in regards to keeping the Muslim community binded together rather than feeling disconnected and disenfranchised. Groups are coming more regularly together because they've realized that, look, the dynamics have changed. Maybe 30 years ago, 35, 40 years ago, everybody maybe have been grouped by I want to say sect, but the groupings that they have been used to from back home. That no longer can work. We can't no longer remain within those. We've got to look at the common issues that we are facing and realize that, look, when Islam is under kind of surveillance, when Islam is, or the Muslim community is being kind of like triggered the way that we have been triggered at the moment, there's some unified responses that we need to have. And that's, I think, a common ground that we can all agree upon.
Final question. We've got a couple of minutes, so I'll give you a minute to at least answer this. How hopeful are you about the future in this country?
There's plenty of opportunity. There is, like I said, these are storms which come and they go. They have their time frame in which they rear their ugly heads, and as soon as those issues, they kind of the flames they slowly die out. So do the arguments itself. There, people can look past and see them. So if you go back to what happened when it was the war on terror, it was a very, very difficult time for Muslim community because everything was under the radar. So, the fact that why are you so religiously devout? If you're praying somewhere, what is this all about? The fact that Islam was being looked at in a very, very critical manner. All the laws of Islam were looked at. Okay, this looks very harsh. This looks very extreme. What version of Islam do you practice? We've weathered that storm. Yeah, we tackled those arguments head on. So, when I was at university, and the war on terror took place, we were active on the Islamic Society on campus with Islamic societies and with other societies to organize events which challenge those narratives. And what exactly the war on terror meant at that time was open license for the Western world to invade and to reshape the politics of the area.
Well, I've run out of time.
The same now as well.
Yeah. So you're still optimistic about the future, in summary. Majid, thank you so much, my friend. Good to see you. Let's not keep it so long next time, inshallah. See you very, very soon.
Inshallah.
Thank you. Majid Iqbal there, the community activist, reflecting on the threat from the far right. Now, next week's show, same time, 7 o'clock, we'll be talking about the optimism that you see on the left. You see, Zach Polanski is the new leader of the Green Party, very pro-Palestinian, very anti-Islamophobia and building links within communities. Mohsin Ali has also become the deputy leader. So we will look at that, but also look at the threat. And so not the threat, but the support from groups like Stand Up to Racism, Unite Against Fascism as well. So there'll be two guests coming up next week, inshallah Aziz. I often realise time absolutely flies. And Majid make a really key point that I just wanted to finish on, which is stay positive, stay strong, reach out, be proud of the country that we've built, the communities that we have, the institutions that we have, and be proud, outward looking, and let's face this together. We defeated the BNP, the far right, over many, many decades, and this cloud will also pass. It will be tough, it will be difficult, but there's many allies from different parts of the community. Thank you so much to everybody who watched, who participated, who shared their thoughts on social media. Keep the conversation going. But from me, Mohammed Shafiq, and the whole team here at Takbeer TV, thank you so much for joining us. I'll see you next week at the same time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.